close-up shots of swords, bows, chariots. Slow-motion combat scenes. Early weapons shaped the fate of ancient battlefields. From the sun-scorched plains of Mesopotamia to the dense forests of northern Europe, the story of humanity is inextricably linked with the tools of conflict it created. These were not merely objects of wood, stone, and metal. They were extensions of human will, instruments that determined the rise and fall of empires, the survival of cultures, and the very course of history. The clash of bronze against bronze, the whisper of an arrow in flight, the thunderous charge of a chariot, these were the sounds that composed the symphony of ancient warfare. To understand these weapons is to understand the societies that forged them, their fears, their ambitions, and their relentless drive for dominance. Each innovation, from the sharpened edge of a flint spear to the complex engineering of a siege engine, represented a leap in tactical thinking, a new answer to the age-old question of how to overcome an enemy. The journey begins in the mists of prehistory, with the simplest yet most fundamental of all weapons. Long before the first cities rose, early humans wielded clubs, sharpened stones, and rudimentary spears. The club, a direct extension of brute force, was likely the first weapon, a simple piece of wood or bone used to bludgeon and crush. The spear, however, represented a significant cognitive leap. By hafting a sharpened point of flint, obsidian, or bone onto a wooden shaft, our ancestors created a tool that could kill from a safer distance. It was a weapon of both hunting and defense, allowing a single individual to face down predators far larger and more powerful than themselves. This simple act of putting a point on a stick was a revolution. It required foresight, planning, and an understanding of materials. It was the dawn of military technology, a principle that would be refined and expanded upon for millennia. The spear was not just a weapon. It was a symbol of projection, the ability to extend one's power beyond the reach of one's own arms, a concept that remains central to warfare to this day. As societies evolve, so did the art of ranged combat. The bow and arrow emerged as a game-changer on the battlefield, a weapon of unparalleled reach and lethality for its time. Its origins are ancient, with evidence dating back tens of thousands of years, but it was in the hands of organized armies that the bow became a true instrument of power. The simple self-bow, crafted from a single piece of wood like yew or ash, was common across many cultures. However, it was the composite bow, developed by the pastoral peoples of the Eurasian steppe, that truly revolutionized archery. This marvel of engineering was constructed from layers of wood, horn, and sinew, laminated together with animal glue. This composite structure allowed it to store and release immense energy, far more than a simple wooden bow of the same size. It was shorter, more powerful, and less susceptible to changes in humidity, making it the perfect weapon for a horseman. The Egyptians, Assyrians, and later the Scythians, and Huns all became masters of the composite bow. An army of skilled archers could unleash a devastating storm of arrows, a hail of death that could break an enemy charge. Decimate formations and so terra long before the lines of combat ever met. The arrow itself was a specialized tool, with different heads designed for different purposes. Broadheads for cutting flesh, and narrow, armor-piercing bodkins for punching through protection. The archer was the ancient world's sniper, a bringer of death from afar. The Bronze Age heralded a new era in close-quarters combat, defined by the first widespread use of metal. The discovery that copper, when alloyed with tin, created a harder, more durable material. Bronze transformed weaponry. The sword, the quintessential weapon of the hero and the soldier, came into its own during this period. Early bronze swords, like deleaf-shaped blades found in Mycenaean Greece, or the sickle-shaped khopesh of Egypt, were primarily designed for slashing and cutting. The khopesh, with its unique curve, could be used to hook an opponent's shield or limb, adding a layer of tactical complexity to a duel. These weapons were not just functional. They were status symbols, often ornately decorated and buried with kings and warriors. A bronze sword was expensive to produce, requiring access to rare metals and skilled smiths. To own one was to be a member of the elite warrior class. Alongside the sword, the bronze-tipped spear remained a staple, now more resilient and deadly than its stone-tipped predecessor. Formations of spearmen, protected by large shields and bronze helmets, became the backbone of armies from the Near East to the Aegean. The Battle of Kadesh in 1274 BC, fought between the Egyptians and the Hittites, was a monumental clash of Bronze Age superpowers. A maelstrom of thousands of soldiers, wielding bronze spears, axes, and swords, showcasing the scale and brutality of warfare in this metallic age. No weapon better represents the power and prestige of the Bronze and early Iron Ages than the war chariot. It was the ancient world's equivalent of a main battle tank, a mobile weapons platform that combined speed, firepower, and shock value. A typical war chariot was a light, two-wheeled vehicle, pulled by two or sometimes four horses, and crewed by a driver and an archer or spearman. Its primary role was not to charge headlong into dense infantry formations, as often depicted in film. Such a tactic would have been suicidal, as the light vehicle would easily get bogged down. Instead, chariots were used as mobile missile platforms. They would race along the flanks of an enemy army, showering them with arrows and javelins, disrupting their formations and demoralizing their troops before the infantry even engaged. They were also used to pursue and run down fleeing enemies, turning a retreat into a rout. The Hittites were renowned for their heavier, three-men chariots, which added a spearman for close-range protection, making them more robust fighting platforms. For a king or a general, commanding from a chariot was a display of supreme authority, a thundering symbol of power that struck fear into the hearts of their foes. The high cost of building and maintaining chariots and the specialized training required for their crews meant they were exclusively the domain of the aristocracy, the ultimate expression of military might and social status. The transition to the Iron Age, beginning around 1200 BC, democratized warfare. Iron was far more abundant than the copper and tin needed for bronze, making it cheaper to produce weapons and armor on a massive scale. This allowed for the equipping of larger armies. Moving away from the elite warrior model of the Bronze Age toward mass infantry forces, the quality of early iron weapons was often inferior to well-made bronze, but their sheer quantity changed the strategic calculus. The Assyrian Empire, one of the most formidable military powers of the ancient world, rose to dominance through its mastery of iron technology and its application in organized, systematic warfare. Their infantry was equipped with iron swords, spears, and scale armor. But it was their development of siegecraft that truly set them apart. The Assyrians were the masters of taking fortified cities. They employed a terrifying array of siege engines, including massive, iron-tipped battering rams housed in armored sheds, and towering siege towers that could be rolled up to a city's walls, allowing their soldiers to swarm over the ramparts. They used sappers to dig tunnels and undermine foundations, and their archers provided relentless covering fire. For the first time in history, a fortified city was no longer an impregnable safe haven. The Assyrian war machine was a testament to the power of iron, engineering, and brutal, psychological warfare. In the classical world, the Greeks and Romans perfected the art of disciplined, heavy infantry combat, building their military doctrines around specific weapons and formations. For the Greeks, the defining weapon was the dory, a long spear wielded by the hoplite, and the aspis, his large, circular shield. Fighting in a tight formation called the phalanx, rows of hoplites would present a solid wall of shields and a bristling hedge of spear points to the enemy. This formation was nearly unstoppable from the front, a human bulldozer that relied on cohesion, discipline, and courage. The success of the phalanx was not just about the weapons, but about the collective spirit of the soldiers, each man protecting the man to his left with his shield. Later, the Macedonians under Philip II and Alexander the Great refined the phalanx, equipping their soldiers with the sarissa, an enormous two-handed pike that could be up to 18 feet long. This created a formation with multiple layers of spear points projecting towards the enemy, an even more formidable and impenetrable wall of death. The Romans, in turn, learned from their enemies and developed a military system that would conquer the Mediterranean world. The legionary was a professional soldier, and his tools were ruthlessly efficient. His primary weapon was the gladius, a short, double-edged stabbing sword designed for the brutal, close-in fighting that occurred after the initial clash. Before closing, the legionary would hurl his pilum, a heavy javelin engineered to bend or break upon impact, making it impossible to pull out of a shield or throw back. This would encumber the enemy and disrupt their formation just before the Roman charge. Protection was provided by the scutum, a large, curved rectangular shield, and larica segmentata, a type of articulated plate armor The Roman legion was a flexible, adaptable, and highly disciplined fighting force. Its success was a result of this perfect synthesis of weaponry, training, and tactical organization. The Roman soldier was the ultimate expression of state power, an anonymous cog in an unstoppable military machine that imposed the Pax Romana through the systematic and efficient application of force. The gladius, simple and deadly, carved out one of the largest empires the world has ever known. These weapons, from the first sharpened stone to the Roman gladius, were more than just instruments of war. They were the engines of change, the physical manifestation of human ingenuity applied to its most brutal and enduring pursuit. They are the artifacts that tell the blood-soaked story of our ancient past.